Could the sacking of the Independent Safeguarding Board actually eclipse living in love and faith at this week's General Synod? It's going to be close. Hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Red Dunn. I'm a vicar in the Church of England, and in the segment on my channel, Digging Deeper, today I'm going to be looking at the sacking of the Independent Safeguarding Board by the Archbishop's Council. Huge news. Safeguarding is so important. We know that the church, any church really, has been dogged by safeguarding scandals because safeguarding just really wasn't part of the culture as it is now, and many people made their way in places of power and positions just so that they could abuse other people, and there was no mechanisms to try stop that. Thank God now there is, and the church is a lot stronger safeguarding, but it wasn't, and we're going through looking at those times of failure, and that's why this Independent Safeguarding Board was established, to go through some of those past cases. But now it's been sacked, and first and foremost, when speaking about this, we have to remember that there are survivors here, survivors of abuse, how they're going to react to this, how they're going to feel. You know, for myself and yourself watching, if you haven't ever been through that, it's, you know, we're listening to news and reacting to news. For these people who have been abused, it's going to be quite traumatic, and that's what we have to remember in all of this. No matter what's gone on, who's right, who's wrong, there's people who have built up trust with and built back trust with the Church of England to be able to bring their abusers to light and to be disciplined in whatever way that may be. And now this has happened, and so we have to hold them in all of this as we go through this. But we still need to understand what this is happening, so we keep them in our prayers, and but we need to get into this to understand. So I'm taking two articles from the Church Times, because there's just been a couple of articles in the past couple of days about this, kind of summing it all up. I did have like 10 tabs to go through, but I'm just going to stick with these two. Still a lot to look at. So let's look at this from yesterday's article. Synod motion seeks debate over ISB affair and inquiry by a Synod senior lawyer. So a General Synod member and survivor advocate Gavin Drake has tabled a following motion to ensure the recent debacle surrounding the sacking of the ISB is up for debate on Sunday. His motion asks for an independent inquiry into the Church's safeguarding bodies, policies and practice, conducted by a senior lawyer, to report within a year and to report to to be debated by the Synod at that time. It was announced last month that the Archbishop's Council was terminating the contracts of 2 of the 3 board members of the ISB and was moving to disband the body entirely. The 2 members have since spoken out, denying that this was due to a breakdown in relationships, because that's what has been said, and trust. As the Council has stated, the decision had been left completely stunned and survivors unprepared and vulnerable, they later said. So the fallout is huge. They were told 58 minutes, I think it was 58 minutes before it was announced into the public that they had been sacked. They kept on the chair, the acting chair, Meg Munn, who the relationship between them as well wasn't great, reading into these articles, to continue the work. So it was always a two-phase process, having a first independent safeguarding board who would eventually go, and then establishing a second, more independent board. But 2 of the members were sacked, and this Meg Munn is going to carry on in this position to set up the next board, which is still controversial in itself. The ISB was due to make a presentation to the Synod on Sunday afternoon after the Archbishop Council announcement. The item was rapidly replaced by an update on safeguarding and the ISB for the Council. So they were going, and that's questions, and it comes up in a bit, but there's questions around this. They're supposed to be going to the General Synod to make a statement, and what were they going to say? We know that, as I said in previous videos, they've been frustrated. They haven't been able to have access to what they wanted to have access. They weren't given any equipment such as computers to be able to do their jobs. So they feel aggrieved and really frustrated to be asked to do this job and then not being given the equipment. If they've said, and felt that the Church of England has not been helping them in this process at all. So this article goes on to say a background paper from the Secretary General William Nye was later published, going further in apportioning blame to the two ISB members for the decision to disband the board. This paper is due to be presented on Sunday in the Sunday afternoon slot. So you've got the Secretary General here, who's apportioning the blame to the two ISB members, Steve Reeves and Jasvinder Sanghia. So I always destroy your name if you listen to this. Sorry, I won't get it right. And now he's apportioning blame to them. He's a Secretary General. Remember, in all this, this is church. This is church. Should we be saying these things? Where's the reconciliation? Where's the way trying to work forward? And I know this was going on. And I think in the whole of this, for my 2 pence, is completely messy. I can't work out myself where exactly you hear things on one side and things on the other, and it just seems like an utter breakdown in relationship, and there was no way to work forward or the opportunity for them to work forward and go to independent person or committee or whatever it might be to help them to reconcile was never found because they got sacked before that could happen. So we'll hear about this this coming Sunday. A following motion has now been introduced by Mr. Drake under standing orders. It states that the Synod is dismayed by the disbandment of the ISB and the termination of the members' contracts, and that the Synod recognises and laments that any working relationship between many survivors and victims with the Archbishop Council has been broken. And this is the thing, we're not in all this, well, in the papers anyway, hearing the survivors, and a lot of survivors don't want to come out publicly and speak about this anyway. So how are they feeling about this and the Archbishop's Council and the big, and it's a big decision that they've made. The motion calls on the Council, with its audit committee, to commission an independent inquiry led by a senior lawyer, judge or King's Counsel, into the safeguarding bodies, functions, policies and practice in and of the Church of England, to report within a maximum period of 12 months. Finally, it requires that the report of that inquiry be fully debated by the Synod to enable that it make decisions about future safeguarding in the Church of England. So this motion that's been put forward will be debated and voted on. So it doesn't mean that this is going through. If people don't want it to go through, they won't let it go through. So, and this is where we have the example here. As it says, shortly after the establishment of the ISB in 2021, the presentation of its first paper to the Synod in February 2022, Mr. Drake warned that the ISB model was unsustainable and called for a full and independent assessment of the work and performance of the NST, National Safeguarding Team, and the myriad safeguarding bodies of the Church of England. Mr. Drake alleged several failings, including a lack of key performance indicators for the ISB, a lack of detail to enable the Synod to form a view of its effectiveness, and a lack of provision for any independent external scrutiny. He criticised the piecemeal approach being offered through the ISB and proposed the following motion, which called for a proper debate on the issues. Instead, the Synod voted by 236 to 75 with 22 abstentions to move on to the next business. So you get this guy there going, no, warning, there's alarm bells going off here. We need to make sure that this is all right going forward, that they're accountable, that we know what's going on and the indicators, and let's debate this, let's put something forward, let's make sure this is okay. And the Synod overwhelmingly voted to move on. No, we don't need that. Move on to the next business. So you can see here, that there's a breakdown already in accountability and understanding at Synod. And so you've got this ISB going forward in the independent and the Archbishop's Council, now managing them and that situation, not making them fully independent. As I said in my last video, how if you're independent, how can you be sacked by the Archbishop's Council? So there was an opportunity here to perhaps put things in place at General Synod, but General Synod moved forward with its business. The article goes on to say, in a letter to the Houses of Clergy and Laity seen by the Church Times this week, another Synod member, Martin Sewell, writes that by voting for next business in February 2022, the Synod neglected to fulfil its duty to scrutinise what was being put on offer. Absolutely. Everyone so wanted there to be an ISB in response to the expectations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse that most were ready to buy a pig in a poke. And thanks to the Archbishop Council and the Secretariat, that is precisely what we got and why we are now in this mess. So, strong words again, but exactly because of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, something needed to happen, but it wasn't done well. And General Synod, remember, General Synod are the elected body of the Church of England and represent all the dioceses across the Church of England. That, by the way, laity, clergy and bishops, that they just put this through with no scrutiny, can't say the word, and in a sense safeguards in place to make sure this worked. So we can see that it's going back there at General Synod. It wasn't set up to do well. It was in a sense set up to fail. So going on to the next article come out today, Bishop of Stepney, my fury when safeguarding is done badly. Persisting with the ISB was not in the best interest of independence or scrutiny of survivors, the lead bishop for safeguarding, Dr. Joanne Grenfell, said on Monday. Speaking in her first interview since assuming the safeguarding brief in April, Dr. Grenfell, who is area Bishop of Stepney in East London, could not give a time frame when fully independent oversight might be in place. So you sacked the board, or two members of the board, one still stays on, remember, but there is not a time frame. You would think that this is now a priority. I know you want the safeguarding to be fully independent, but it has to be put in place, and you have to do both of these things. Make sure that the failings from before have not going to be repeated again, but also not saying we don't know when it's going to be there. How would the survivors who have been speaking to the ISB feel about this when they don't know what's going to happen? The anxiety and stress that they'll cause them, and it's too easy to do an interview and say we don't have a time frame, but is it easy to go and speak to those survivors and say that to their face? That's the big test on this, and I hope that they will be able to go to the survivors, speak face to face with them about this. She goes on to say, I just want us to do it well, not just quickly, and I agree with that. It has to be done well, but also you have to balance with getting this in place as well. A hard thing to do, but there, in one way, there are, because it hasn't been done right, there's key things that are already there that you know not what to do. Anyway, I think institutionally, in governance terms and culture terms, we've got a long way to go, which is unfortunate in a such a big organisation as well. In an interview at the London Diocese House on Monday afternoon, Dr. Grenfell reiterated the line taken by the Archbishop's Council and the Archbishop of York, who blamed a breakdown of relationships for the board's disbanding. The ISB was established 2 years ago, was originally intended to become fully independent last year. In an interview on Ready For on the 25th June, Archbishop Cottrell said that the ISB was in a two-stage process towards full independence, but that because of a tragic breakdown in communication with those who are the members in stage one, with huge reluctance, and after many, many other ways forward, the Archbishop's Council took the decision to sack them. And as I said in a previous video about this, that apparently someone on the Archbishop Council saying they were a nightmare to work with. And I think it's a complete breakdown on both sides. But again, you know, we have to go back to that General Synod and scrutiny and making sure that these things were in place. Mr. Rees and Miss Sanghia have disputed this description of the relationship and insisted that they had been willing to work with the Archbishop's Council on the next phase of the ISB's work. Dr. Grenfell, however, took the view that the dispute notice issued by the two board members in May made their relationship untenable. So they put a dispute notice in there which was not well received, should we say. She said, I think that confirmed for me that we reached a point where relationships had broken down to the point where it wasn't actually in the best interest of independence or scrutiny of all survivors to carry on as we were, she said. But there is being pushback on survivors. They've been quite shocked at this and dismayed that they've been sacked. So it's very easy to be here commenting on this, but you just don't know what's gone on behind closed doors. So I can only comment and put my 2 pence in where, from what I'm reading and trying to hear, but things, but make sure I check those facts, as it were. But there's a lot of stuff going on here, and a lot more, always a lot more, as we know, that we just don't know what actually went on. May never know. The article goes on to say, in an email on the 6th of June and shown to the Church Times by a third party, the Secretary General of the Archbishop Council, William Nye, criticises Mr. Reeves and Miss Sanghia for not working constructively with the acting chair of the ISB, Meg Mann, on proposals of Phase 2. But we know that Meg Mann came in, appointed by the Archbishop of Canterbury, York. She had a conflict of interest because she was on the National Safeguarding team and potentially investigating some of the work that she'd done herself. For me, it's just crazy. It doesn't seem the right person to put there. Even if she had all the qualifications and she was great, I think you can't have someone who potentially would investigate her own work. Miss Mann's appointment was a cause of controversy owing to a perceived conflict of interest with her position as chair of the National Safeguarding Panel, a body created to scrutinise and provide guidance on safeguarding policy. She had also had a seat on the National Safeguarding Steering Group, which decides strategy. In a dispute notice, Mr. Rees and Miss Sanghira had objected to her appointment. Of course, I think most people were a bit up in arms about that, let alone two people who are going to work with her. In her view, it was entirely reasonable for the Archbishop's Council, and this is Bishop, to have put in place an interim chair. She did not accept that there was a conflict of interest because of Miss Mann's involvement with the National Safeguarding Panel. That position was independent and was due to end in the autumn. Anyway, I think a lot of people beg to disagree on that one. It is understood that by the terms of their contracts, if the dispute notice could not be resolved in 30 days, the parties proceed to an independent mediation. Mr. Rees and Miss Sanghira were sacked 28 days after issuing the notice. It's like the notice of 58 minutes before the public here. So 2 days before it was going to go to independent mediation, they get sacked. Questioned on why sacking them rather than pursuing independent mediation was the appropriate response, Dr. Grenfell said, I think when that much water has passed under the bridge, it's hard to get to the point of trusting again. So there is something going on. There is some big breakdown of relationship. But we'll never fully know what that is. One side is saying one thing, one side will counter it as another. Again, I'll come back to the point that we are a church here. We're a church. And so it feels quite difficult to these. You said this, you said that, you said this. What does it show as a church to all those who aren't part of the church looking in at this story as it gets bigger and bigger? It does not look like a great witness. It just, we should be seeking mediation. That's what we do as a church. We're supposed to. Dr. Grenfell also criticised Mr. Rees and Miss Sanghera for not having met Miss Munn to discuss proposal for Phase 2 since March. On Monday of last week, Miss Sanghera said that they had met, but that the working relationship had quickly broken down and that she and Mr. Rees had asked Miss Denai to mediate between them. So we can only speculate whether their relationship broke down. It could be they believed it was a conflict of interest. It could be personality. It could be many things. But they've asked Miss Denai to mediate between them. So things just aren't going right. Again, maybe it really is down to General Synod and just rushing this through without proper scrutiny. On Friday, Phil Johnson, who chairs the support and advocacy group Minister and Clergy Sexual Abuse Survivors, said that the only way forward is to involve survivors as much as possible. He reported, though, a great many survivors feel that the Church of England doesn't want independent scrutiny. And this is a question being bandied around. What's going on here? Why isn't there being fully independent scrutiny here? Why is this happening? What's being trying to hide? It probably absolutely nothing, but it doesn't look good. It looks it could be about relationship breakdown and wanting to move forward to an independent board, but to a lot of people outside this, a lot of lay people, it just, they could actually say, yeah, I agree with that. A great many survivors feel that the church doesn't want independent scrutiny, and to make people feel safe and survivors feel safe and that they're listened to, it has to be independent scrutiny. Those who have been promised reviews by the ISB have been left in limbo, he said, and felt abandoned and betrayed by sacking. So these people who have come forward or having reviews, that's just stopped now. I can't imagine who is doing that. But the article does go on to tell us in a way. It says on Monday of last week, a statement was released by the ISB saying that it would continue to honour any reviews or complaints that were underway or due to start. The next day, however, Mr. Reeves questioned how practical this was, given the strict data protection protocols whereby survivors had to give express permission for their details to be shared, even when the ISB was shared. Absolutely. You can imagine that the data protection on this is really high. And also, a statement was released by the ISB. The ISB consists of one person, as far as I can work out, of Meg Munn, who is in charge of setting up the next independent safeguarding board. So I don't know how she would honour any reviews or complaints that were underway or due to start. She would have a lot of work, and she's been given notice as well that once her job's done, she's off. She's gone. Despite the demise of the ISB, Dr. Grenfell said that the safeguarding the Church of England was largely working well. If you go back to the cool things about managing risk and preventing them, then I think that's being done well and increasingly well in dioceses. But of course, there's always things that could improve. Mr. Rees and Miss Sanghera have suggested that the timing of their dismissal might have been planned in order to prevent the appearance of the General Synod. Dr. Grenfell dismissed these suggestions, saying that they have been very free to speak their minds. It's important that Synod and the wider Church hears the things that need to be said that are critical of the Church of England, where there's a huge room for improvement in terms of safeguarding. So this is a big thing. They were sacked just before General Synod. Questions? The questions there? The questions for you? They have been free to speak their minds after, but what were they going to report to General Synod? Remember, at General Synod, they perhaps could have said stuff that could have led to a debate or things being changed, or I don't think that can happen now because they're not there and they've got no capacity to say anything. They can only go through the help of these motions, but I don't think they'll ever be invited to General Synod to speak about any of these things. So in a way, removing them again, it's not saying that there's a conspiracy behind this, but it just doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. All these timings and things. And I know there was a dispute resolution notice for 30 days. So in a sense, they would have gone into mediation, and would it be inappropriate for them to go? And so there's a lot of other stuff going on. But it's you know, I said before in my videos, at parish level, and you know, in churches we work incredibly hard now with safeguarding, and safeguarding is so much better than when I first started. I haven't been in the church a long time, 8 years, and we got these things called parish dashboards, which is a great tool to get the safeguarding up to date. Safeguarding is always changing, and so we can make sure that we're always on it. It reminds us to do certain things, and it's a great tool. So safeguarding in the Church of England is great now. At a local parish level, we know that it's improving at diocesan level and Church of England national level. This is going back looking at the past stuff, and it's failing and letting people down. What we just have to hope and pray, we are where we are, that over this General Synod, that they can get the scrutiny, that General Synod do take it seriously this time and find out the truth, and make sure that the independent safeguarding board is an independent safeguarding board, and that an Archbishop's Council cannot have that much power just to sack them. Surely it should have gone to General Synod to be able to do that, to look at that, or you know, to outside of General Synod for them to be sacked like that, just off the cuff, as it were, whether it's right or wrong. You know, there's got to be a process. Maybe they were put in as their line manager and had that authority. But again, as I said before, and I'll say again, what about the survivors and how they feel in all this? I know all this is going on, but first and foremost, it should have been thought about, how will this affect them, and how can we, even if they had to be sacked, how can we do this in such a way that will help these people and keep their trust in the Church of England? It is a mess. It is really a mess. And let's see what happens at General Synod this weekend, and hopefully they can start sorting it out.